Years of racial discrimination had created intolerable conditions of inequality and deprivation for the black minority. At the heart of the problem was segregation. In 1954, soon after Warren's tenure began, a Negro child, Linda Brown, seeking admission to an all-white public school, brought suit against the Board of Education of Topeka, Kansas. The court's unanimous decision in this case was the first in a series of civil rights decisions which was to change the lives of black people across the country. It advanced a national ideal to eliminate racism. The lawyer who argued the case for the NAACP was Robert Carter.
The NAACP lawyers had decided to make an attack on segregation, and at the time, by 1950, which was the first argument I had made in the Supreme Court, a case was decided which held at the graduate level that segregation itself was a denial of equal educational opportunities. And on the basis of that decision, we decided in the NAACP that the time was ripe to make an all-out attack on segregation at the elementary school level.
Like millions of other black children in the South, Linda Brown had been denied entrance to the school under laws permitting racial segregation. In 1896, the court had condoned this practice with its separate but equal doctrine, which had permitted segregation in all areas of life in the South. Mr. Carter.
Chief Justice Warren writes simply, the decision was well understood, and he said that decision as beautifully as any judge could possibly have done.
Does segregation of children in public schools solely on the basis of race, even though the tangible factors may be equal, deprive the children of the minority group of equal educational opportunities? We believe that it does. We conclude that in the field of public education, the doctrine of separate but equal has no place. Separate educational facilities are inherently unequal. The court's decision divided the country. White Southern reaction was angry and defiant. The man who argued more cases before the Warren court than anyone else, Jack Greenberg.
The Brown decision ran into such severe opposition, particularly from the southern states, that we had almost a series of minor revolutions on our hand. We had Little Rock and New Orleans. We had all the declarations of interposition and nullification. We had the Congress of the United States, or the Senate in any event, coming within a single vote of stripping the court of its jurisdiction. And during this period of time, that is shortly after 54 and 55, the court did very little with regard to implementation, except to sort of play its role in declaring that these revolutions, that is Little Rock and the like, could not stand. The educational effect of the court's work, however, was profound during this period of time, and what happened was what became known as the movement began. And the court played its role with regard to that. It protected those in the movement who were being arrested and clubbed by police and so forth, protected their First Amendment rights of free speech. And ultimately, the principles proclaimed by the court and the activism of the movement led to the passage of the Civil Rights Act of 1964 and 1965, at which point Congress and the executive branch, the president and the court, had all caught up with one another.
After the court ruled for the concept of school integration, it set out in 1955 to ensure implementation. It called for integration in public schools with all deliberate speed. This phrase was widely interpreted in the South as a signal that the court would tolerate delay, so the pace of integration was painfully slow. Eventually, the court became impatient with this open defiance and ruled in 1964 that further delays in desegregating school systems are no longer tolerable. In a recent decision, the court has provided strict criteria of compliance. For Jack Greenberg, it was another important victory.
In the last term of court, in case of Green against New Kent County, the court proclaimed that a desegregation order must work in order to be effective. It wasn't enough to have formal provisions like freedom of choice, which permit intimidation or permit the old habits of segregation to continue. In desegregating a formally segregated system, you have to have standards which actually bring about abolition of the previous two sets of schools. You have to end up with a single unitary school system. The Supreme Court essentially said was, look, we're not interested in excuses, it's just got to work. And if you can't make it work any other way, and this is the way to make it work, well, this is how it's got to be.
Having said that the court's record in the race relations field is excellent, I have to make some modifications. One, I think that the court was in error in its all deliberate speed formula in terms of the implementation of Brown. The court had good reasons for doing this, but this is a part of what blacks are now complaining about. I think a part of the business that blacks are now complaining about, because what the court really did in that decision was to say that we will sacrifice the rights of the individual black child to equal educational opportunity and postpone it and put it off in order that this decision will become more palatable and more acceptable to the white majority.
The court's goal was racial equality. Its decisions have sought to eliminate segregation in virtually every area of life. It has ended the poll tax, which had been widely used to limit black voting. It has ruled against the drawing of political districts along racial lines. It has sought to prohibit all racial discrimination, both private and public, in the sale or rental of property. But its power to achieve full racial equality is limited by the willingness of the nation to comply. Thus, after 16 years, the court's goal remains unfulfilled.